With a mission to collaborate, contest, curate, and cultivate for future, we here at Film Club IIT Kanpur welcome everybody to this exclusive live webinar. Hi, this is Divyanshi Agarwal, and my friend Shreya Vesh are here welcoming you all. A warm welcome to our guest speaker, two-time national award-winning Indian filmmaker whose films have touched people worldwide. Be it the Busan Film Festival, Toronto Film Festival, and well, many more. The beauty of his filmmaking doesn't cater to just a big box office collection. He's one of the most critically appreciated filmmakers across the world, with several films in Bengali, English, and the latest Aadhaar in Hindi adorning his directorial head. We welcome you here, sir. We feel honored to welcome Suman Ghosh here amongst us, looking forward to gather knowledge and inspire ourselves from his experiences. Maybe finally making the director to speak out those lines, being on the other side of the camera this time.
Thank you so much. I'm so feeling delighted to meet you guys at IIT Kanpur. So looking forward to the session.
We are just as delighted, sir. So, sir, a film for me, in simple words, it's fun, innovation, learning, and message. What is your idea of film, or how do you define your love for it?
How do I define my love for it is very difficult because it is intangible in a sense, but love is in a sense intangible. But I think to me, film is an experience of life, and as a director, an avenue to experience life to the fullest. So that is one way I look at films.
So there have been no times when you felt like it's getting tedious and you don't want to get up from your bed for an early morning shoot, maybe?
No, so I should inform that as many of you all know, that I'm also a professor of economics in Miami. So I have two professions in a sense. One is films and one is teaching and research. So I don't do too many films in the sense that roughly it has been like in 2 years I have made one film, and probably it is getting more and more busy for the last few years. So when I go to make films in India, it is a very novel experience for me, which I have waited for a year, 2 years to go on floor. So it is such an exciting, the thought of it is so exciting for me. So that getting tired never rises. And I, though it's a cliche to say that, but I really think that it is the best profession in the world. Maybe I'm sure I'm biased, but it is. I'm telling.
Okay, many moms would definitely feel happy after listening to that, with that much of excitement to go and do some work.
Finally being productive in these long holidays. But sir, you have a
well-developed career in economics, have done masters and PhD in economics. Then what really inspired you to become a director, more than just an amateur and rather as a professional one?
So you see, I'm from Calcutta and I grew up there. So when I was going to college, I was doing my economics graduation in Presidency College, Calcutta. I remember, of course, in India, that we are fed almost while we are growing up to cinema and, of course, Bollywood, and in Bengal, we have films of Satyajit Ray and all. So there was a natural inclination. But I remember around the time when I was in Presidency College doing my graduation in economics, the job of a director or what he does, because previously, when we were young, we were fascinated with, say, Amitabh Bachchan, Mithun Chakravarti, and, the Soumitra Chatterjee, the actors and the actresses and all. But around that time, a change happened where the role of a director started intriguing me, because I came, I thought for the first time that, he is or she is the person who actually is the creator, as in cinematic language, it is also called auteur of those cinemas that so much of the country is bound to. And slowly, developed, starting getting interested in films. But I come from a very middle class family, so going into films at that stage was just unbelievable. So I never could tell my parents also. And unfortunately, to top it all, I was doing quite well in my academics. So I went to Delhi School of Economics, and then I went to Cornell University for my PhD in economics. And then when I went to Cornell, I realized that there are so much leeway in when the academic curriculum in the US has so much of leeway that while doing my PhD, I could do my film, I could pursue my film passion concurrently. And that is when I started really getting interested. I started taking film classes there at Cornell, and that intrigued me. And subsequently, after taking the film classes, it was a tough time because you had to balance my PhD with the film studies and things like that. But somehow I got to do that. And from then on, I think the thought of being a filmmaker really got into my head. And filmmaking, as you know, it's such a bug that once it gets into your head, it's difficult to get rid of it. So it was a tough time. So so ever since then. So a long answer probably to your short question. So that was my process, how I got into films. And then, a typical story of, I didn't have money for my first film. I borrowed money and used my savings and everything to make my first film. So that, when I'm older, 70, 80 years old, I wouldn't regret that I didn't do films. I was by then a professor of economics. But I always wanted to do films. So I just thought that let me do one film. Let me see whether I can do a film. I never thought of success or what will be the box office or anything like that then. I just had an idea, which I sincerely believed I want to do. So I did that film. And, weirdly, fortunately, or whatever it is, that film got 2 national awards and that gave me a confidence. It was not that the lure of a national award or the attention of a national award, but that gave me the confidence that probably it might not be a bad idea to pursue, films. And now, of course, 14 years have passed and I've made 7 or 8 films. So, and that is how my career graph has progressed. Yeah.
So does economics in your movies in any way, like the finance and managing finance and that part of the movies?
Not really, because see, I don't produce my a few films I have co-produced because I do 2 separate genres of films, which I can discuss later. I have part produced a couple of films, but generally I don't like the job of a producer. So financing and all has been taken care of my producers and all. So I think it is purely disparate fields, branches. And in a sense, I like that because it gives you perspective. When I'm in Miami teaching and when I look back on my films and study on films and whatever, it gives me a distance from which to, see the world of cinema. And I think that helps being so disparate to areas. Yeah.
Right. But then again, with successes, even if we have many successes and we get noticed after those successes, but then there are always a back of failures that people don't usually talk about. And like you just said that your first film won national awards, but then again there might have been a journey, the complete journey, like
Sure.
you have said, but then glorifying the failures in that journey. Would you like to
you
add
said,
something?
there was a difficulty with managing to procure the money for that, the financial perspective. There were some hurdles to the process, so we would like to know about that more.
So to answer Divisha's question first about failures, of course, in any field, any branch, whether you are in a corporate sector or films or whatever, failure is bound to come. And how you carry yourself in when failure comes, it is very very crucial. And I let me just give you a small anecdote on this. So I talked about my first film, and then I made my next film. So after that, producers approached me, and it was not a difficult task. But the second film somehow did not work at all. And I was very, very discouraged, disheartened, and it. So I remember precisely that was in 2009, I think. I had been to the Indian Film Festival in Goa, probably IFFI it's called. So there's the India International Film Festival in Goa, where my second film was a part of the Indian Panorama Films there. But it had released before in Bengal. It didn't do well, neither critically nor box office wise. So I was very down. And there in one of the meeting, or I just met Mani Ratnam, and I had a conversation with him, which was I think very very helpful for me and for anyone. So Mani Ratnam told me that I introduced myself, and I told him that my film is in the Indian Panorama. And so he asked me that, has it released in Bengal? I said that yeah, it's released. I'm extremely disheartened that it didn't do well. And before that, he asked me about my first film, and of course he knew about the film. Soumitra Chatterjee got the national award in that film, so he had heard about the film. He said that congratulations, I heard about the film, I didn't know that you have made it. And so when I told him about my failure in my next film, he said that, so tell me, Shuman, when you got the national award for your very debut film, you were like extremely happy and delighted, excited. I said, of course, like I didn't think in my wildest imagination that this will happen. So it was unbelievable period in my life. So he said that. So I tell you my story. I took 2-3 failures to do a decent film. I was not getting money. I was struggling in the initial years. And after that I got some form of footing in the film industry. You had such a big success in your first film. Your second film has failed, according to you. A film never fails, he told me. But according to you, it has failed, and you are distraught. You're almost planning to give up and things like that. Now, let me tell you something. Whenever success comes in this field, do not get overboard. Do not take it in your head. And hence, when a failure comes, you will not get affected that much. So try to maintain that balance. When there is success, of course, you will feel happy, but there's no need to get overjoyed. And hence, when there is failure, it's no point just thinking of giving it up. I don't have it in me, because these are emotions. You should try to keep it within a band. And that is very, very crucial. And I'm telling you, you will get much more success even after doing so many films. I'm still, sometimes I struggle with these thoughts and feelings. And any professional has to go through this. So you should learn to handle this, And I cannot tell you how encouraging that was. And Mani Ratnam was a director we grew up with, like his films like Roja and Bombay. When we were in college, it released. And those were sensations, as all of us know. So that was a very encouraging piece of advice which I got from one of the greatest filmmakers from India ever. And I remembered that. So to answer your question, how do you take failure? I think I remember I try to recollect Mani Ratnam's words. And of course, after so many years, you learn to take it in your stride and not to get too overwhelmed by anything, by failure or success. So that is the thing. And Usha, to answer your question about financing and stuff, so somehow it has been not a big problem to get financing. But there have been many of my films where there was lack of financing in the middle of the shoot. The producer ran out of money and the film had to be stopped, and then again started shooting after a year, actually, things like that. So these are parts of the job. You see, oftentimes from the outside, it looks very, very cozy, and very, very satisfying. Of course, it is very, very satisfying. But this is a package which one has to, accept. So, yeah,
I guess that would help a lot of us IITians as well, considering we do have to face these challenges.
of course.
Yeah, it would be lovely if you could share what went behind making all your films, like what paved the idea behind it to how it got implemented, especially your first film, Podokep. I think I'm pronouncing it right, right?
Okay. In Bengali, the English translation is footsteps.
Footsteps, yeah.
So you are asking me about how did the idea come and how was that implemented, or
Yeah, like
okay.
when you started with the, how do you start with the film, like what, where the idea comes from, or how do you feel like you should do it about this topic, and then how do you get it implemented?
So you're generally speaking of how do I get my ideas, and so I think out of the 7 or 8 films made, except that I have made, except for one, all have been my stories also, story and screenplay. Though my Hindi film, which is supposed to release sometime soon, that has been co-written. The screenplay has been co-written, and also one Bengali film also was co-written. But generally I pick up my stories and write. And how I get to my story, of course, there are some basic things which interest me as a person. Forget about a filmmaker or anything like that. Uh, you know, a transition of any form, in transition in societal transition, interests me a lot. So, for example, Podokep was a story about an old man who is trying to adjust to this current changed world scenario. If you think of your, say, grandfather or grandma, they were living the world in the 70s, 80s, 60s, which the world was a completely different place. Now y'all are growing up in a world where, with computers, smartphones, and it's a digital world and everything like that. So these two generations interacting, and how that gives rise to drama, that interests me a lot. And Podokip was about it is in a sense a father-daughter relationship. The daughter was played by Nandita Das, and
Right.
it was the father by Soumitra Chatterjee. So this confluence, I wouldn't say confrontation also, this confluence of the adjustment process, which was, the idea behind how Podokep came. And of course, there are reflections of my father, whom I have seen growing up, a difference in values and things like that, which I wanted to explore. Many of my ideas actually come from newspaper articles, and so, for example, my film Nobel Chor, which was starred by Mithun Chakravarti in the main role. So that idea of Nobel Chor was about a poor farmer in Bengal. That Rabindranath Tagore's Nobel Prize was stolen from his place in Shantiniketan in Bengal, I think early 2000s, and it was never found. The Nobel Prize, the medal as such, it was stolen from a museum where it was kept, and there was a huge furor in West Bengal because of that. And as usual, people said that it's center's plot. Some people said that there's a foreign hand there, and blah blah blah, and those kind of things. Now, my story is about a farmer who gets that Nobel Prize in his backyard, and he doesn't know what a Nobel Prize is. Of course, a poor farmer has no idea what a Nobel Prize is, who Rabindranath Tagore is. They probably think of Rabindranath Thakur as a Thakur, and they pray to Thakur. And we, the urban populace or educated people, we revere his poetry or his stories or whatever, his prose and everything. But to a farmer, what does Rabindranath Tagore mean? So, when I read newspaper articles on the reactions after the medal was stolen, that intrigued me. And satire is a genre which I love, because even very serious topics can be, delved very. Okay.
Sorry for the glitch, guys, and hello, we're live again. Yeah, sir. So, what I was saying was, कि अभी आप you just said that you have made many unorthodox movies like this, but then again people really appreciate the Bollywood movies above these critically acclaimed movies. So what should be done about that, as in what should be done to attract them more towards the critically acclaimed movies, which might actually enrich the cinema.
Can you hear me first? Let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
It's everything is okay now. Yeah. So, can you tell me what do you mean by Bollywood movies as such?
The kind of movies that are mostly aimed at box office, because there are the two kinds of movies that people usually are making in today's world. Mostly there are those which are box office which are meant for box office, and then
Commercial
there are
films.
the commercial films, and then there are those which mostly focus on the critical aspect, the story, those kinds of movies. So you have made such unorthodox films. So what I'm asking is how to attract audience towards them.
See, the reason I asked you what do you mean by Bollywood is that Bollywood, especially last 10 years or so, it is such an amorphous genre where it is not just the song and dance films which you're saying, masala, pure masala films. Films like Stree, Andhadhun, and Article 15. I think you cannot call them, they are box office success, huge successes, that.
Yeah.
But you cannot call them pure masala movies also.
Yeah.
So it has become very diluted now, the concept of, just Bollywood films. And you can, for example, a film like Dangal, for example, it's one of the biggest hits, but also it is so much strong in content, in artistic values and everything. So Bollywood is making. So now you can. First of all, if you ask me as a filmmaker, and those of you aspiring filmmakers also, there is. I see amongst a lot of aspiring filmmakers a disdain for commerce or money. But remember that filmmaking is an expensive proposition, so you cannot just ignore commercial aspects, because otherwise, why will someone? If you're making a movie with your own money, then it's a different issue altogether. You don't care about returns. You don't care about box office and anything. Returns in the sense nowadays it's not just box office. Your OTT platforms and your channels and whatever it is, then it's a different issue. But typically it is not like that. You make films with borrowed money, and of course we all want to make good art also, but one cannot neglect that. And that is a fallacy which a lot of filmmakers, young filmmakers have. And I see that a disdain for the commerce of the industry, but that shouldn't be. That is not necessarily bad. Now, uh, now, if you ask me how my career has progressed, somehow I have tried to. So uh, there are some very weird, wacko ideas which I have, which I know that there is no box office for that. Okay, so there is a film for you can see it on Netflix called Peace Haven, and that film is basically based on a story about three old men in their 80s who are going to build a mortuary for themselves. So it's a very weird, dark concept, but dark humor actually. If you see the film, it has a lot of humor also. But I knew that that film, will not have many takers commercially. So, but these days, so those films, typically I am also a co-producer in those films, because if I am experimenting on certain things, which is wacko, which is not, I cannot expect a decent release also. And those films, I am also a co-producer, because I also want to share the burden of a failure of such a film, failure in terms of commercial failure, right? But nowadays, the good thing is that because of the OTT platforms, uh, those films can be sustainable. And if you see my career graph, I have made films. I have made another. The most bizarre film was Shamal Uncle Turns Off the Lights. It was made with a crew of 5 members, and shot in 7 days. And probably that film was my most successful film internationally. It gave me my foot into big international film festivals like Busan and stuff like that, and through that film. And people will laugh at that, but the budget of that film was not even 20 lakhs when I made that in 2011 or 12, I think. So those type of films are very strange movies, but I want to make those movies also. But parallelly, I make films like, say, Podokep, which had Nandita Das, Soumitra Chatterjee, Nobel Chor had Mithun Chakravarti. I made a film called Kadambari, which had Konkona and Parambrato. So those are big star, big budget movies, I must say. My latest Bengali film, which was released, was Basu Paribar. And people joke that it is like a Karan Johar Bengali film. It has, superstars from yesteryears to current superstars also. So if you see the poster also, it very looks like a Karan Johar film. But, so those are much more expensive films, which I cannot afford those films also. So, producers are there for those films. So me personally, I try to balance that. Now, in those films, I know I'm taking the star cast because I have to recover the money. I have a responsibility because I'm taking someone's money and making these films. So I better know how to at least recover the money. And then, of course, both Kadambari and Basu Paribar were big commercial hits in India and Bengal. And but those other films, which are very experimental and maybe for my satisfaction, my artistic satisfaction, I make that. And I'm a part producer also of those films. And because as I told you, I want to take the blame for a commercial, but luckily now, because of the OTT platforms, P7 was picked up by of course, I'm making those films, somebody should be interested. So international film festivals love those movies, the esoteric ones. And Shamal Uncle was picked up by Amazon Prime. P7 was picked up by Netflix. And this is how now it has become a sustainable venture. Those offbeat experimental films also. So this is how I personally, as a filmmaker, try to balance the two types of projects that I do. Yeah.
That's a wonderful idea, sir, and concept that we must balance everything, take everything in consideration. It must require a lot of hard work from your part. And so there is a question coming up, like, what Indian films which are not very well known would you like to suggest the audience to watch?
Indian films which are not very well known. I don't know what you mean by very well known. I can tell you, because you all are a much younger generation. I don't know whether you all have been exposed to a classic era of Hindi films, which you have maybe missed out. So if you have heard of Hrishikesh Mukherjee, he used to make films like Chupke Chupke and Golmaal and things like that, and films like that, which are available on Netflix these days. These were the early years of Amitabh Bachchan's career starting. These are very nice family movies. And so a good example would be the movie Piku, Shujit Sarkar's Piku. That genre of films which were, and I don't know whether you all have seen Ram Gopal Verma's films, Satya and Shiva and those kind of. So nowadays you see in these series, like I saw a wonderful series called Patal Lok. I saw it last week. Thrillers and dark movies, which I think the first ones were made by Ram Gopal Verma in the 1990s. Satya, Shiva, these are phenomenal movies. So I don't know what movies you all watch or what. So these are Indian films which I definitely would urge to see, the precursor of what you're seeing these days. Even Shujit Sarkar has a film coming out on Amazon Prime, Gulabustavo, which is on the 12th of June. It is coming up. He personally is indebted to Hrishikesh Mukherjee for those films, which early years of Amitabh Bachchan, and Interestingly, Amitabh Bachchan is also in Gulabo Sitabo and Ayushmann Khurrana. So this is a genre of films which I really want. I was seeing them in this lockdown period. What else to do? So I was seeing a lot of these old genre Indian movies, Hindi movies, which probably the younger generation has not seen. And I would strongly urge you all to see some of the brilliant stuff which is coming out from regional cinema in India. Because of Netflix and Amazon or Z5 or whatever platforms you watch, a lot of them are available. So if you I would say go to Film Companion site, and they have like 10 best Telugu movies, 10 best Malayalam movies, and movies like Super Deluxe or Kumbhalagni Nights and U-Turn. These are movies coming out from the regional languages. There's a wonderful movie on Netflix called Thithi, Kannada film. So oftentimes we get too bogged down with Hindi films, to get infatuated with Hindi films. Of course, Hindi films have also changed so much, over the years. As the example I gave you, it's films like Stree, Andhadhun, and these Article 15, Mulk, and those. They are addressing serious issues, but also very entertaining. And to go back to your topic, very popular also, given by their box office success. But I would urge you all to look at some spectacular regional films which are also coming out from India. Yeah.
I guess they are pretty much underrated. The
Right.
word which he was going for, I guess. So, sir, there might have been some moment in cinema that you go back to again and again to take your inspiration. What is your moments? Your such moment?
Like, what do I go back to, or what is your
A
question?
certain moment in cinema where you which you use as an inspiration again and again for your coming movies or your future plans. So that particular moment inspires you.
That's right. So there are some generic directors, and there are some specific directors, actually, sorry, and movies which I regularly go for inspiration. For example, Satyajit Ray's films have been like since we are growing up, and more and more after I have started making films myself and been into the film world, I realized the genius of Satyajit Ray, and I go back quite often, as all Bengalis do, and many Indians also do. But there are particular films which I go back for inspiration for any type of movies that I'm doing. There is a movie called Babel. I don't know whether you have seen it. It's Brad Pitt is there. It's directed by Alejandro Inarritu. Fantastic storyline, fantastic script, acting, cinematography, everything. It's like almost a perfection on cinema, and it touches your heart also. There is a movie called Cinema Paradiso, an Italian movie, which is brilliant. And there are some favorite filmmakers of mine. Akira Kurosawa is a favorite filmmaker of mine. I go back to seeing his films, repeated viewings of seeing how much nuance there is to that. And amongst the Indian filmmakers, Mani Ratnam has always been a big, apart from filmmakers like Satyajit Ray and Ritik Ghatak and all, Mani Ratnam has been. And of the later directors, of course, as you can understand from my conversations, Ram Gopal Verma was a very big influence when we were growing up. And, and many other current Indian filmmakers I just adore. Of course, Anurag Kashyap, and some films which have infatuated me, like Masan, the movie in recent years. Newton is another movie. So it's not a fixed thing which I go back to, but I have seen these movies many times in order to find nuances in every meaning, and that is what a very good film or a masterpiece film is, right? So.
Right.
Okay, sir, that was a wonderful answer. Like, we get to know that there is momentum behind everything which never finishes. We just need to look about for it. So,
Correct.
sir, we would like to ask you next that what are some of the qualities which a director surely must have? Like, there, and also you have been writing your movies. So, there would be a process where script writers see that the scenes have been cut or been edited away or changed tremendously by the production. So how does a scriptwriter deal with that kind of dejection or hurt, and then there are the actors that you have to deal with. How much improvisation do you allow them? We would like to know your views about that.
About the screenwriting thing, because I only direct my own films, and whenever I've made films in Bengal, or the Hindi film which I made, in the editing process also, I had a lot of say, most of the say actually. Of course, I love taking inputs from my editor, from my producer, or actors, or whatever, whoever. I love taking inputs, but ultimately the final call rests with me. So it has never happened that I wrote something and that was edited out in the post production or something like that, because I am the director of that movie and I be there till the end, so the final call is with me. And about the next question was about the actors, you said, right?
Yeah,
How much?
yeah.
So it depends on actor to actor. What I genuinely believe, first of all, that casting is the biggest decision in the acting department. So when I write my screenplays, I typically have some idea about the character which I am writing. How does he or she look? How does he or she behave, and things like that. And so to do the right casting is half the job done. I think Martin Scorsese has a line also that uh, I think the same thing. Half the job done is in the right casting of the characters. And after the casting process, uh, how I work with actors is different for different actors. So what I do is, at least in the last few films, what I've done is I give a reading myself of the script and ask the actors who will play those roles. So after doing that, I give a biography to each actor of how I see the details of the characterization, and I give it to them, and then I ask the actors to come up with their suggestions, with what they would like to do, and with joint discussion, we come up how that role will be enacted. Now, with a lot of actors, I have worked with them for 3 or 4 films. For example, the legendary Shomitra Chatterjee, I worked with 3 or 4 films. He knows me very well. I know him very well. So the understanding is at a different level. So he knows what I intend to when I'm writing. But for some actors, I give them much less leeway, depending on, but ideally, I would like to project to the actors what my vision is about the role, and then the actor on screen plays it out. So I think a good acting performance has, to me, the proportions might vary. 50% is preparation, 50% is spontaneity. So so that should be, you should leave enough room for spontaneity, because that is when the magic of good acting happens. But of course, you make the actor prepare, the actor also prepares for the basics, and then in front of the camera, the magic which happens, one should keep enough space. So if you restrict the actor too much of, don't do this, don't do that, don't look here, don't, then it will, that artificiality will come out, I think. So I'm very, very conscious about that. And luckily I've worked, with some of the great actors of the country, and they have always given me magic, which I also, they also never imagined that that will come out on shot. So that is how I deal with actors generally.
Right.
Right, sir.
There are many aspiring writers between us right now, might be watching us. Can you tell us about the process after you have your first draft, and how exactly would a new writer get his script made? What should be the entire process of that? Is it just the observation skills that a writer should include, or the entire writing process to get his final script done?
So Um, I think it goes without saying that the first basic thing a writer should do is to read a lot, because these days we see too much, right? We see shows, we see movies online, or see YouTube videos. We are always on our Twitter, Facebook, and blah blah blah. So the act of reading is almost dwindling, I would say, particularly in the younger generation. And I think that is very important, because when you read, you imagine, when you imagine your a different world. Your degrees of freedom of your thought process is much more when you read, rather than something is shown to you. Okay, so that is firstly very important. And what I do is, when a seed of an idea comes in, I let that brew for, say, 5 6 months before I even touch the typewriter, sorry, type keyboard. So so because it is like hatching an egg. You have to make it warm, and it takes time, and then the chicken comes out. Similarly, it's like nurturing a plant. You give soil, you give nutrients. So when an idea is like a beach, it's like a seed, and when it is in the soil, you have to nourish it, give it water. So in those 5 6 months, think about the idea. So we have, a lot of us have a general tendency, an idea comes, we start writing it up in our laptop, and start writing the script. But I think it is very important to nurture the idea first, to read around that. If it is a historical idea, if it's a biography or whatever, read, and slowly that will go into your blood, the characterization, everything. And after that, when you have developed enough energy in yourself, you have imbibed so much that now you have to vomit it, like the actual writing process. So in a sense, for me, after that 5 6 months of brewing the idea, nourishing the idea, to write the script hence takes like 2 3 weeks. The first draft, I'm saying, 2 3 weeks, I'm out with the first draft, because I was brimful till here, because I was thinking about it, nourishing for so long. So that is my process. So again, there is nothing hard and fast rules for writers. Since you asked me what would I advise, I can just tell you how I work. Okay, for other people, something other process might work. For someone, it might work that in the second day itself you start writing the script, and they come up with a wonderful script. But that is not how it works for me. And uh, in the first draft, it is not very polished, but at least the flow is it's quite smooth. That's why in 2 3 weeks I can finish the first draft. And then what I do is go back scene by scene, and to think about, so suppose I have written a particular scene, you know what else can I do? Does that convey what I want to say? And start tinkering on that. And of course, research is so important. I remember when I was writing Aadhar, the Hindi movie, I stayed there in that gaon in Jharkhand. I went thrice or four times and stayed there, because unless you can feel the place, feel the characters, I don't think you can write a very honest script. So that is very important. So to feel the locale, how people talk, what are their insecurities, what are their, moments of joy, and all of this. Probably this will not get into your writing also in whatever you write, but subconsciously that things settling in your mind, it is important for the writing process. Okay, so that research is so important for any writer, if to write the thing. And then numerous drafts of fine tuning after I have written the first script, first draft. That happens, and slowly, after I, lock in the actors, I take input from the actors and what they feel. And certain, as I told you, not only from my actors, from my entire team, I take suggestions, and of course, my final call is with me. If I like something, I can include it in the script, and this is how, over a period of year or 1.5 years, 2 years, a final version develops, which you can actually go on the floors with that. So this is my process of writing, which I follow.
Okay,
Right.
sir. So in lieu to this, I have something to ask. That would be like, it's a process in which you let the art flow through you, the characters and the setting, the theme of the movie flow through you, and it is a long process which requires a lot of research. So for people like us who are film enthusiasts and have clubs in colleges, and we have to maintain our academics with that, and it's the Indian education system, so how do we make it possible on such a small level with very limited filmmaking knowledge?
See, I think first of all, filmmaking knowledge is too hyped. If you can, a lot of the filmmakers never had a proper filmmaking degree as such. Satyajit Ray never had a film degree. You can always the best way to learn about filmmaking is just through by seeing movies, by reading articles, and of course for hands-on experience to assist some filmmaker and things like that. Now when you're students, you can always because you're in academia, the breaks, summer breaks, winter breaks, rather than having fun somewhere, suppose you're thinking of a story based in Orissa, or based in Punjab, or whatever it is. So you can make a trip to Punjab and stay there for a month or so and get involved in it. So what I would say is that you have to manage it within these gaps which you get in your curriculum, in your regular curriculum, and try to do that as best as you can. So if you think about it, I have thought about it. People often ask me, how do you manage two careers, like teaching and research in economics as well as movies? If you think about it, we waste so much of time. In it, you are probably many of us spending couple of hours just on Facebook or Instagram, or maybe more, I'm sure. Okay. Now we waste so much of time. If we can adequately, astutely think about utilization, if we are conscious about the fact that we are wasting time, you just go through your Instagram feed or your Twitter feed, it adds nothing to your knowledge as such. You're seeing which star is dressing what way, and just cut that crap, and utilize time more judiciously. I think anything is possible then. There is a lot of time. I don't believe people saying that too many things to do, and people do so many things in their lifetime. So you can surely write a script within your academic curriculum. Yeah.
Right. I guess that was exactly the kind of thing that people will relate to the most,
Yeah.
considering
I would like to
Instagram and
hear.
Facebook, considering the Facebook and Instagram. So, talking about international directors like Yasujiro Ozu, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, made films which involve family values and also in some sense, involves casual social commentary, like Podokar. So, how do these films of classical era impact how we grow out as filmmakers? Because there are many aspiring filmmakers, Veena. So, how does that classical era help us?
Um, First of all, it's strange that you mentioned Ozu, because yesterday night I saw a movie by Ozu, because I'm seeing a lot of the Japanese movies, of the classical Japanese movies. There's another director I would, you know, sincerely recommend, strongly recommend, is called Mizoguchi. You have heard? He made a movie called Ugetsu and many other brilliant movies. Mizoguchi, of the same era. They were contemporaries: Ozu, Kurosawa, and Mizoguchi, the three greats of Japanese films. So, as you rightly said, Ozu used to make films of values as such. A lot of it was about family values, but wonderful films about old age. I'm sure you know about the movie called Tokyo Story, which is one of his biggest hit. I think 5-6 years back there was a Sight and Sound magazine in the UK made a poll of the best movies ever, and I think Tokyo Story was number one. Ozu's Tokyo Story. It was an old couple and their life. It was based on that. So Your question was how can we learn from that? You will see that Ozu has a very different. So let me go back to the three great Japanese directors I was talking you. Since you mentioned Ozu, Kurosawa was one extreme where his films have been like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo and very Throne of Blood. He made a brilliant adaptation of Macbeth, in Japanese, Throne of Blood. It was full of vivaciousness, life, and the camera techniques and the storytelling techniques. I'm sure you know about Rashomon, Kurosawa's famous movie. It was a different style altogether. He also was painting a picture of contemporary Japan then, while as Ozu, a very minimalist filmmaking. His films, camera movement was very restricted. It was almost block frames in which he shot his movies. So it is interesting exercise to realize that you are making a film on, say, family values or about old age. Kurosawa made a brilliant movie called Ikiru on an old man, or about the contemporary Japanese society. And you can see the different ways of storytelling between Ozu and Kurosawa. And that is that. Why I'm telling this is what I am also as a student of cinema. What I was learning from Ozu was that the same thing, the cinematic language. After all, as aspiring filmmakers or filmmakers, we want a grasp of the writing process and the cinematic process. And it is interesting to see how a similar topic can be treated by two different cinematic styles and of the same period. There's no point comparing contemporary filmmaker of 2020 with Ozu or whatever it is. But, so that's why I'm comparing Kurosawa and Ozu. And that will take you to the basics of filmmaking. Like, for example, shot taking, for example, whether the block frame works with the type of script which Ozu was trying to say, as against the very vivacious camera movements of Kurosawa. What is the important, how is music used by both the directors, how is sound used by both the directors. So you see old classical movies to get an idea of how the masters of filmmakers, historic masters of filmmaking, have conducted these filmmaking processes, and learn a lot about everything: camera technique, use of music, the acting. The actors in Kurosawa as against Ozu are so different, their acting styles. And it goes with, because you see, filmmaking is, after all, on a ek tar mein badna chahiye. Everything should be in a one wire. And if it goes off, the movie goes off. So the acting, the scripting, the camera movements, the music, everything should be bound in a simple wire, the same wire rather. And the director's job is to ensure that. And you will, to study these classical filmmakers, how do they use each aspects? I can oftentimes what I do is I see a film multiple times, a classic film. So Babel, for example, Inarritu's Babel. I've seen it many times. In one viewing, I just view it as an audience, how I love it. Then I view it to see the use of music, where music and the mixing, like sound and music mixing. In one viewing, I just see it for the camera movements, and try to study the camera movements of a great DOP or a director, whatever. So this is how you can study classical films and learn from them. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, if you'd get an opportunity to go back in time and change something in any particular movie of yours, so what would that movie be, or what would that change be?
Particular movie of mine?
Yeah, some movie that you want to change.
Definitely, I have thought about it. So, for example, my movie Podokhep, my very first movie, it was based on a father-daughter relationship and the clash of values, in a sense, of the younger generation with the older generation. And though it got so much of acclaim, but later when I saw Shujit Sarkar's Piku, I'm sure you have seen it, Amitabh Bachchan, Deepika Padukone and Irfan was there in Piku. A similar topic was taken. His was also about essentially a father-daughter relationship, Amitabh Bachchan and Deepika Padukone's. But it was so wonderfully done with so much of humor, and it was more entertaining and engaging to me. So if I want to make Podokkhep again, Piku will be my template of what I could have done much better. So if one sees those movies, one can see it's almost the same idea of father-daughter relationship and the clash of values, but the characterization, the filmmaking is to me, Piku was an example of how you can take. It could have easily been melodramatic, emotional, sentimental, and things like that. But the way Shujit Sarkar and the entire team handled that movie was a learning experience for me, because I had a similar movie before, 10 years before, roughly 10 years before Piku. And so I now know what I could have done correctly after seeing Piku. So I would have corrected Podokkhep in the lines of Piku, of how treatment wise I could have made it different.
Aiming for more than 2 national awards, I guess.
Sir, so it's like things which are a bit more on the serious note, or things which are more dark to be dealt with, they are covered or coated with a theme or feeling or emotion of something else to make it more subtle and yet more digestive. So I guess that was kind of what you were trying to imply, reality to the
I
relationship.
lost you.
And
I lost
going
you. Can you tell me again? Your voice was not coming. Yeah.
Okay, so I was saying that the darker themes or themes which we would not very explicitly like to discuss are often quoted with something which is more easier to digest, and I guess that was what you were trying to imply with the theme of Piku, how it portrayed the relationship. So going forward with that, we would like to ask you, how was the feeling of being awarded for your very first movie? And I guess that's it. The question.
Yeah, as I said, when it was a very pleasing feeling, of course, but it was more of an affirmation that I might be. It might be a good idea to pursue that profession, because I was already in a different profession then. So it was an affirmation that probably there is a reason to pursue. That was very crucial. But of course, the feeling was euphoric. But again, going back to what I told you in the very beginning of the conversation, what Mani Ratnam also told me. So these days, any good news comes, I feel happy, but I don't get myself washed with joy and spoil all perspective in the process. So.
Right.
Yeah. So along with this, the question, these are the questions which are coming up. So along with that, the question being asked is that what particular advice would you give to future filmmakers?
Considering the pandemic going on right now, specifically.
Yeah.
There is the advice doesn't change because of the pandemic or anything like that, but two things which have helped me in my career is, one is to be more open to life, because when you want to become a filmmaker, not only a director, I'm saying for a cameraman, writer, musician or whatever, you will read the great directors, great, so they have imbibed life to the fullest, and that is the best nourishment that you can have as a filmmaker. So any new experience, just dive into that. Any new thing, just now, since you mentioned the pandemic, of course one can feel dejected and give up on life, and nothing is happening. And why don't you take even the pandemic for your positive nourishment? You can take that as an excuse to go and read a lot of books or see a lot of movies or shows which you wanted to, otherwise you didn't have time. So use the time properly. And so basically be open to any experiences which life throws you. You read about, for example, and there will be a lot of turmoil in your life, lot of uh, adversities will come, but one has to take it in stride. And I personally feel that uh, people have to keep that zid, what you call in Hindi. If you want to make films, have that zid, and you know, never go for peripheral excitements. Peripheral excitements means oftentimes you go into films for the glamour, or for the name, fame, money. I don't think it is sustainable that way. You have to have a genuine reason why you want to tell a story, why you want to get into this profession, and that is, I think, very crucial to always keep your mind steady about.
Right, sir. As you already mentioned in the previous portions, that there it's all about the balance and the passion along with it. So, the next question would be, we read in your previous interviews, and also you mentioned it right now. You love to travel, and you suggested traveling to get more ideas and get deeper into the prospect of filmmaking. So, for people who have traveled less, and with the ongoing scenario where we can't actually travel, and we have a lot of time on our hands, so what should we do about that? Where should we get the worldly experience to write a script with good descriptions?
See, by travel, I it can be physical travel. Of course, that is the best experience. But you can travel through the world of books also, right? I, for example, when I am reading some book, I just submit myself to that place. Now I am reading a book on, by a Spanish writer, and previously I read a book by a Russian writer, and it was as if it's a novel. So I was staying in Russia, 18th century Russia, for a month or so when I was reading that novel. So, and it's such a pleasure that, after you're done with your day at night, you go at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whenever you go to sleep. Well, then you cut off yourself from this world and you can go to Russia, and you can go to Spain, and just submit yourself to that, whatever it is, fiction, non-fiction, whatever you're reading. And I can tell you that every day, that is a big inspiration for me. When I get up from bed, I think that at night, where will I go and visit today? Whether, and I can read a short story from Vietnam. Tonight I'll spend in Vietnam. And that is a huge kick which I get. So in a sense, I'm traveling, right? So I cannot physically travel anywhere now, and nobody can. But your mind, you cannot keep it in lockdown. Your mind is always free, so why don't you travel in your mind? So that is what I do, and that you all can also practice. And I'm telling you, you can practice this also, that every day you think of, at night at 10 p.m, I will go today to Spain, I will go to, and of course you're giving yourself, submitting yourself to the characters there, their insecurities and everything. So it's another way of traveling.
So with that, I have a small question. That when I read a book or get inspired with a story, and it stays subconsciously in my mind, I fear that, like, there was Helen Keller's story, that she unwantedly had a portion of plagiarism in it. So how do we get over
Sorry,
that fear?
who had a portion of
Uh,
plagiarism?
Helen Keller had written her autobiography. In that she mentioned that a story which she had read as a child, she imbibed it in her first book, and for
Oh,
that she was criticized. So similarly, if we read a lot of books and we get inspired by them, subconsciously imbibe some features of that. So how do we get over the fact that we might cause some kind of plagiarism?
that I don't think you cannot do anything about. When you write a story, uh, what comes from your nooks and corners of your brain, of your mind, you cannot control. Something which you had read 10 years back might not consciously also, come into your writing. But I think that every writer has, and that's in a sense a good thing, right? So unless you completely jhado a story, and that's a different issue. But something which your favorite writer had written, and one nuance, one characterization you like, and that is how good scripts or good writing comes up. Your influences are very important. So I don't think that is a major issue. And but if you're, of course, jhadoing a complete story or something, that you will be conscious, I'm sure. So that danger, but otherwise, that danger is not there, I think.
So there's a fine line between inspiration and writing the entire thing down as same.
Correct,
Divyanshi
correct.
would go with the next question. Sorry everyone for the glitch and all the time it took to get corrected. Hello everyone, we're back again. And now we're in the concluding segment of the webinar. I would like to thank you, sir, for gracing and radiating motivation, experience, and of course, direction to our audience out there, pun intended. We'd like to end this with what we had started and have stood for. Love movies good enough, you can make a good one. As Quentin Tarantino said. Hope you all had a great time. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir, again.
Thank you, sir.